Okay, so welcome to part 2 of street crime and violence. In this section, we're going to discuss problem-oriented policing. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to read that. Okay, so this kind of policing is oriented or aimed at a particular problem. Think about police shows that you watch on TV. What do? They respond to calls and they're really reactive. Well, instead of reactive policing, this is about proactive policing, where the police and community come together as a team to address underlying issues. What can everyone do to stop these crimes from happening? What role can everyone play? What are some of the easy things that can be done in communities to stop crime from happening? And it may be something so easy as putting up more street lights, making the place look a bit brighter, and therefore you stop people from hanging around. There is paint that can now be put onto buildings that graffiti won't stick to. Putting the railings on benches, having social workers to help people with issues. Because this type of policing saves time, it saves money, and it saves resources. It's not going to solve it all together, but it's more about being proactive. So analyse the problems and solve them. Now this slide and the next one are just there for you to read through. I don't have anything extra to add, so I'll just give you some time to read through them. Okay, now another YouTube clip. I know there's a few today, but I want you to really make the time to watch this one. It is a longer one. It does go for about 13 minutes. It's in New Zealand and it's a total example of how they introduced problem-oriented policing into a community that was very low SES, very run down, very taken over by drugs. And the police just came in and used some different strategies to try and get rid of the drug problem out of the neighbourhood and absolutely achieve some fantastic things. So a great example of how problem-oriented policing works. If you're interested in policing or law or anything, then please make the time to watch this one. Okay, street crimes. What are they? Well, this isn't about domestic violence or white collar crime or even really terribly violent crime, but what happens on the street. And it takes up a huge amount of police calls. About 90% of police calls for service are for these types of crimes. So there's really big containment issues in stopping this from happening. So fights breaking out, glass being shattered in shops, bus stops vandalised, prostitutes soliciting, illicit pills sold inside nightclubs, a purse being stolen, car windows smashed and CDs are stolen, The public expects the police to respond immediately to everything that goes on, and they expect them to respond really quickly too, which isn't always a problem. So if you look at drug dealing, cocaine markets tend to cluster on major thoroughways, on street corners and in easy access places. Look, due to the internet, this may not happen as much anymore as at street level as it used to, because it's probably being ordered a lot more on the dark web and on the internet, and not always happening on street corners like you see a lot on TV. But studies have been done to analyse street crime. So researchers look at the problem and find out where it is happening and what is happening, so that the problems in that area can be addressed. So we know that cocaine, all this drug dealing happens on street corners, that it can be sold among friendships groups and in nightclubs. And it can cluster in public places in socially disadvantaged areas of the city. So you'd have to be probably pretty naive to think that this isn't still happening on street level, but it's happening a lot more on the internet as well. Prostitution characteristics. This was a study that was done in Jersey City. Jersey City had a lot of issues with prostitution in the late 90s and early 2000s. So Whispered looked at the problem of why the women did it. What did the problem look like? Police would arrest the women, they'd let them out on bail, and they'd be back straight onto the streets. Now, why would they go straight back to it once they've been arrested? And why do they choose the location that they choose? Think about where the university is. And I know a lot of you haven't really attended the university yet, but I can fairly safely say that we don't see prostitutes hanging around outside the university soliciting for business. Okay, yes, it might be a high volume traffic area, probably nowhere really for cars to pull over, but students on the whole probably can't afford what they're offering. So they're choosing their locations because of environmental attributes. They work in the zone that provides a lot of traffic, room for the cars to pull over, good street lighting to give them a bit more feeling of safety. They need a cheap nearby hotel where they can go with their clients. They might go to dimly lit vacant lots, abandoned cars or car parks nearby, but they also need to have a clear view of the police if they're coming, because they don't want to get arrested. So the offenders become comfortable with their home turf, and crime does not tend to displace. So it's not going to move anywhere else if they're happy with what it is going on there. So we need to describe the problem from a criminological viewpoint to analyse it. So what are the reasons why these women keep prostituting? Well, if they're arrested and they're bailed, they have to pay the bail. They are doing this usually because this is how they earn a living. They have rent, they have bills to pay, but a lot of them also have drug problems. So if they're arrested and they're bailed, they're just going to go straight back out there because they still have to earn money for drugs and they still need to earn money to live. Okay, this is a pretty heavy YouTube week. Watch this one if you can for cracking down on street crime. They are all really, really good videos. Okay, disorder on the streets. So what does the term disorder mean? Well, it means things like yards overgrown, rubbish, graffiti, old cars and furniture in yards. I'm sure you have all driven past houses where it looks like the front yard is a rubbish dump. So if the neighbourhood looks like that, are you going to feel really safe going there? Do you say, oh, I love it when I get harassed at the bus stop, I feel right at home? Okay, no, you're not. Okay. You're not going to say to someone, sure, I'll take a pee in the gutter right beside me. No worries. So if you were the owner of the business with this top photo and this happened, how do you think your customers are going to feel? What are the consequences for business owners due to these types of behaviours? Okay, This is really, really low level disorder on the streets, public urination, but it can have a really, really big effect on the people who own the business. If things are not orderly, then they're broken down. The message that this sends is that nobody cares. If those guys all do pee there and the walls are wet, so I'm only going to consider that they have peed there, how do you think it's going to smell tomorrow? If you go into that shop or business and it's not air conditioned, it's going to stink and it's not going to be very conducive to business. Okay, so people lose their business, then they lose their income, and it just doesn't send the right message. If graffiti is left and not cleaned up, it sends a message that it's okay to do that. So that completes part 2. In the final section, we're going to discuss the broken windows theory and 3 different types of crime prevention. And the broken windows theory is all related to this issue of public disorder. So see you for part 3.